Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining the JIRA Service Desk add-on webinar. Having implemented many idle-based service desks within JIRA, we're really excited about this new product. Precipio was fortunate enough to work with Atlassian early on when this product was still only a concept, and we've got to say we're very pleased and amazed with what Atlassian has released in JIRA Service Desk 1.0. We're recording this session and we'll submit a link to the recording over the next few days. I'd like to take an opportunity and remind you about our next webinar, Get With It. We'll host that December 4th at 11 a.m. Central. And as we go through the webinar today, and you have questions, please be sure to provide those in the question utility in the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll queue those up and answer them towards the end of the session. And on the phone today, a few of us from Precipio Consulting. I'm Charles Wells. I've recently joined the team after serving the last 4 years as a service desk manager for a company in the deregulated energy industry. We've also got Christian Lane, founder and managing partner of Precipio Consulting. Also, we have Shayla Sander. Shayla helps coordinate these webinars as well as many other business development activities here at Precipio. Now, we've been Atlassian expert partners over 5 years now. We became one of 4 U.S. enterprise expert partners in October 2012. In September of this year, Precipio Consulting earned the distinctive Platinum expert status with Atlassian, which puts us in a very elite cadre within the expert partners community. Over 95% of our projects are Atlassian related. We've got over 100 clients across the U.S., ranging in size from 20-person companies to Fortune 20 companies, spanning many industries. Those industries include technology, automotive, electric, commercial arts, oil and gas, publishing, banking, finance and insurance, medical and pharmaceuticals, telephony, security, and gaming. We help our clients with process-centric technology solutions that facilitate traditional business process management, IT service management based on IDLE, and software development lifecycles. In the SDLC space, we're helping clients transition from traditional waterfall to agile methodologies. And whatever widgets you produce, we help improve the quality and throughput at the lowest cost. We support our clients in all facets of the Atlassian product suite and build methodologies and solutions across the entire product suite. We do solutions architecting and implementations, licensing, installs, upgrades and maintenance, hosting and managed services, as well as training. So let's begin the introduction to JIRA Service Desk. I'm excited to be discussing this tool with you today. JIRA Service Desk is good for organizations in several different aspects of IT service management. It's good for organizations with established service desk looking to streamline tool functionality. I think it's great for those looking to implement IDLE or ITSM, as it can throttle your project through the initial stages. And it's also excellent for any organization looking to grow and mature capabilities to process alignment. So today I'll be introducing the JIRA Service Desk add-on and discussing how it helps coordinate the IDLE Service Desk function specifically. The points I'd like to cover, I'll give you a little background on myself as a service desk manager. I want you to know that I can relate to the challenges and obstacles from running and implementing service desk. The first main point we'll cover is a brief recap of the IDLE Service Desk function, which sets the stage for the new product offering from Atlassian. And after reviewing some function basics, we'll cover the typical needs, wants, and realities of customers and staff expectations. I think that's key to understanding, understanding these is key to the successful operation of a service desk. Implementations are never easy, and it's a pretty complex and distinctive change compared to other integration efforts. While it is complex and not necessarily easy, it is highly desired across many industries right now as people decide to manage their offerings as services. I think it's an interesting fact, 38% of existing JIRA customers are already using homegrown workflows in JIRA towards this aspect of service management. And this percentage, in my wholehearted opinion, will only increase as the value of ITSM practices is perceived across multiple industries. So next we'll get to the meat and potatoes section. This is where I'll introduce the specific features in the add-on. We'll begin to discuss the benefits of JIRA Service Desk. And while I run through those, I'll do my best to show the connections with those needs, wants, and realities that we reviewed. I'd like you to keep in mind that the tool was developed with actual customer feedback, so it's really well positioned for reality. It's not just something developed in isolation um, in Atlassian's dev teams without feedback, because it's got real world demand at its heart. The tool is well positioned over competitors. Um, because of this, I think the tool really drives adoption and will work to increase functional efficiency and effectiveness in your organization. And finally, we'll look at a demo instance so you can see all the features in action. A little bit about myself, provide you some background as it relates to service desks. I've just left 7 years working for a software solutions provider in the deregulated energy industry. All of that time includes production operations support experience, with the last 4 years being managing of the service desk. I had 8 direct reports. We were an idle-based implementation, so we tracked and managed issues via basic support SLAs, as well as handling Tier 1 resolution. The main goal of our service desk was to increase resolution of incidents and requests in order to free up higher tiered, more experienced personnel. So what we were really trying to do is drive costs down to the lowest level possible while increasing our resolution efficiency and effectiveness. By Q1 of this year, we had begun taking on tasks from our 5th internal department. So we were able to provide scalability in freeing up resources across 5 different departments over the 2 main offices. And for us, that meant being able to execute repeatable processes and procedures consistently with increased velocity. So I developed 3 distinct strategies over the 4 years. And during that course, we tracked 2 major metrics. We had first level resolution, which was any items that we resolved in the service desk. First call resolution was our distinctive metric for anything we resolved without escalation within 30 minutes. So our goals achievements took us from 10% at initial onset, 10% of requests only, to when I left, we were resolving 63% of all main office issues. So that number for us was around 500 or more tickets a month. For the last 21 months of my tenure, we were consistently handling a third of our resolved issues within 30 minutes or less. My specific role, of course, I handled typical managerial tasks, hiring, firing, performance reviews, weekly and monthly metrics reporting, strategic review, and asset and assessment. So a little about the service desk. It was a distributed follow-the-sun setup. We had a main office in Houston, Texas, and a satellite office in Gliwice, Poland. We provided 24-hour weekday coverage. Our primary staff duties included incident and request tracking, fulfillment, escalation, and resolution for around 200 internal users, which included frontline operations and off-hours work. As well, we were positioned in front of clients for both the Houston and Atlanta offices. Our additional duties included running the CAB meetings, educating users on the idle-based processes, user training for JIRA, knowledge-based implementation and maintenance, and full administrative duties for the Atlassian products, JIRA, Confluence, and their plugins. In 4 years, we experienced 4 distinct team-forming sessions due to promotions or turnover, and perhaps some of you today can relate to working in an environment where change and flux are the norm. I know this is a cursory recap, but I want you to know a little bit about my background to understand that I'm aware of the challenges, obstacles, and complexities inherent with service operation activities, and specifically service desks. Again, regarding today's discussion, I really want to stress that I appreciate how Atlassian developed the tool, tailoring new features and functionality toward actual demand. That's what they've done with Service Desk, and that's what makes it such a viable product for many of us in multiple industries today. So let's recap a little the idle function, which is the Service Desk. Quick reminder, as you have questions, feel free to use the question utility in the GoToMeeting control panel. So the idle-based Service Desk, it's the single point of contact. On one hand, it doesn't sound too flashy. It handles all intake, triage, record keeping, and monitoring of all issues through to completion. The funneling activity at the Service Desk provides consistency in availability, execution, and expectation management. So again, it may not sound unique, but what does set the idle Service Desk apart from help desks or their similar sounding concepts is the follow-through and ownership and management of issues through to resolution. So that consistency provides two major results. The first being user experience. Consistent interaction and experience will keep your customers coming back. Uh, Typically, interaction includes requests for information, status updates, some administrative work like password resets or user account creation, reporting of malfunctions or outages, etc. We actually handled outage coordination. So if production systems ever went down, the service desk was actually on point to rally the troops, so to speak, and get the necessary people on board. And the second result of consistency is the efficiency gains when working to restore services. The service desk is an active role that helps ensure that consistency of process execution. Having accurate data records means that your reporting is going to be accurate, means that you've got consistent information when passing tickets to multiple tiers and colleagues. And the service desk affects a wide range of possible scenarios. So that consistency is really important when you've got a wide gamut of possibilities. Again, I want to stress the service desk raison d'etre is really bringing about timely restoration of services with as little impact and downtime as possible. So it's one thing to have issues and tickets created, but it's another step in maturity to have somebody actually overseeing those and ensuring they're being completed and being completed on time, right? The service desk really has a timely component to its ownership in order to make sure that the company is providing services at the agreed upon rate. Issues need to be resolved based on contractual obligations. So the service desk within the ITIL, IT Service Management Framework, is part of the service operation phase. That includes event, request, incident, and problem management. The service desk must quickly and thoroughly handle all intake and triage of such issues and record that relevant information to allow for appropriate routing and to provide the information necessary for colleagues to be able to handle the issue. And often the service desk overlaps with operations and handles a number of items for resolution. I mentioned we were handling actually 63% in my case. Again, these are going to be information requests, password resets, initial troubleshooting, well-documented and repeatable processes, daily procedures, etc. And whether handled by the service desk or escalated, it's critical that resolution is measured against service level agreements for two reasons: customer satisfaction and profitability. The faster you resolve items, the greater your customer perception and retention, and the faster you restore services within your SLAs ensures the company protects itself against penalties, loss of goodwill, or other negative consequences. So this really puts the service desk front and center when it comes to helping the organization as a whole meet its commitments and provide those services. And of course, the services is what we offer to make money, right? To do so effectively, it's critical that SLAs be well understood, documented, and verbalized so that all users understand their role and specific responsibilities. Governance activities such as KPI measurement are usually developed and employed to measure and assess these trends and behaviors contributing to successful service operation. And the service desk also has interaction with other processes from other idle service lifecycle phases. The service desk, of course, will interact with service transition in such areas as knowledge, configuration, and change management. It's going to interface with the change advisory and planning boards. And outputs from the service desk actually become inputs for certain processes, such as continual service improvement, service measurement, reporting, and many other improvement initiatives. Service management functions, such as the service desk, help organizations develop capabilities to stay competitive. Remember, 38% of current JIRA users already use homegrown workflows to facilitate these activities. And up till now, they have not had a robust or elegant seamless integration that the new JIRA Service Desk add-on provides. So really, JIRA Service Desk provides a medium for even greater results in developing these capabilities as competitive advantages. I'd like to take a second and have a quick poll of everybody on the call today. The statement that I'd like you to agree with or disagree with is, my company utilizes a service desk. So I'll activate that poll and take about 30 seconds. Your options are going to be yes, we have one, we're in progress for implementing one, we see the benefit, or no, we don't have one. It looks like just about everybody's coming in. Over 80% of everybody, let's say we've got 100% responses, 80% say you already have a service desk. 11% are either implementing or see the benefits to a service desk, and only 7% responded that they currently have no service desk. So again, if you factor in that almost 40% of current JIRA users, but 80% of people on the phone or on our call today are interested or using service desk, I think it speaks across multiple industries that this function is vital and viable to sustaining competitive advantage. So we've reviewed the basics of the service desk. I want to talk a little bit about the needs and wants of what I call reality. So among the factors surrounding service desk or ITSM implementation are those various needs, wants, realities of specific situations. And in most cases, compromises have to be made in order to reach a reasonable scenario that meets the majority of basic concerns, because we're dealing with multiple stakeholders, right? And there are three constituent groups. These include the customers, whether internal or external, your team members, which are the actual staff using the tool to accomplish those service desk tasks, and then, of course, management. And management's responsible for oversight and progress assessment, right? Each of these groups bring their own biases, expectations, or punch lists for what's required and what's nice to have. And in my experience, oftentimes the wants, or specifically wants gone unmet, can actually have a greater impact on success rather than meeting the actual needs. But let's briefly look at each group. So for customers, customers need a direct route to the service desk. They need consistent support availability, and they need consistent execution in handling, right? Because those things help set the tone and precedent for future interaction. Those are their needs, and customer wants include interaction that doesn't disrupt their daily routine, doesn't require much effort on their part, and allows them to stay focused on business activities, right? So our customers, oftentimes on the business side, they prefer to stay out of the weeds as possible. They don't want to be bogged down in minutia and details beyond their scope or knowledge. And for them, at the end of the day, they're looking at results. They give little thought as to how things are accomplished, as long as the desired result is achieved. Next, let's look at the team members. Your staff, they need to know what's expected of them, right? So clear expectations are primary in order to manage the workload against well-documented service level agreements. Basically, we know this translates into performance expectations. So accordingly, they want a tool that provides good flexibility, reliability, ease of use, and upkeep. They want a tool that provides consistency with a little bit different angle, right? For them, the tool shouldn't impede process execution. When you've got good performers and they have the clear expectations, they just want to be able to get their work done. And finally, management. Management must be able to track and measure and assess progress so they can identify bottlenecks in order to construct solutions. They're accountable for the project viability and results. So their needs include the ability to quickly chart based on key performance indicators. And their wants then really are simplicity. They're not technical personnel. They don't want to spend hours configuring or learning a new application. And they want to be able to accrue data and make informed decisions. So these are really the independent biases that the different stakeholders bring when we're talking about service desk or ITSM implementations. So with a wide scope of varied duties that we've discussed with the service desk, there's always going to be challenges to implementing this kind of ITSM process and function. I've divided these into two initial categories, tangible and intangible. Tangible, of course, are those things we can see, measure, assess, and discern. Those things that we can exercise a fair amount of control over. The intangibles, by contrast, constitute the unseen, the thoughts, motives, perceptions, etc. So it's comparatively easy to set job duties and performance goals, hire trained staff, select a tool set, or evaluate performance. Again, those are the tangible parts that are readily distinguishable and accounted for. While some of the most difficult challenges for service desks and ITSM implementations include those intangibles, very often the perceptions, thoughts, and expectations that guide individual behavior. Because IT service management activities affect everyone, they have far-reaching impact. You're talking about changing the work environment, the work tempo, specific processes, oftentimes culture, and this affects everyone. So each employee must understand the reasons for the changes, their schedule, and have an idea of the overall concept, uh, or they're going to fail to grasp the scope, expectations, and prospective benefits. And I can sum up by saying the biggest challenges then is the balancing act of corporate and individual expectations versus the value goals. In my experience, balancing these expectations with a couple primary groups required a disproportional amount of time and energy on my part. Um, and those obstacles led to my main problem, which we'll move into here, is adoption. So I believe the distorted understanding of expectations and value will impede the adoption of the service desk or the ITSM processes you're looking to implement. So any action you can take to smooth implementation by meeting these wants, needs, or dispelling these challenges will speed your adoption. Another example is despite our increasing resolution rates, we tended to grow. In our first 4 months, we grew 25% and we grew 20% each of the following 2 years. So despite those rates of increase, excuse me, it actually took 18 months before I began seeing the traction I wanted internally in order to leverage the service desk scalability that we could provide. I'm sure if I could have removed the corresponding blockers, I could have shaved off quite a bit of that time. So I've covered, kind of the balancing act, expectations versus value. We looked at those tangible, intangibles. Adoption, again, was a big obstacle in my case. My last note is about making it meaningful. At the end of the day, someone is ultimately accountable for those results, and that translates into performance, right, of individuals and the group. And then the function itself when we're talking about an ITSM or service desk implementation. And we typically address this via some sort of reporting. Oftentimes, the reception of reports can be clouded by that perception. So if people have that negative perception or don't understand the value and they haven't turned the corner, the reports aren't going to be very meaningful. So because of that, the best reports are automatic, as up-to-date as possible, and widely accessible. By providing such reports, users and ideally customers have the opportunity to understand how the service desk is positively affecting their daily activities across the company. So at this point, we reviewed the idle service desk function, the needs, wants, and realities surrounding the major players, and some of the challenges inherent to ITSM and service desks. So now that we've covered those, the JIRA Service Desk add-on has 5 unique features that really address these challenges. Again, I think this is exciting because it's really a tailored solution that addresses actual pains being experienced by real users. So let's look at those in a bullet list here. The JIRA Service Desk add-on supports an intuitive interface. It's going to allow customers and staff to perform relevant work accurately and easily. There are custom queues that are going to help you spread out the workload in pertinent, easy to grasp visual groupings. You've got a powerful SLA feature that's built in that helps staff keep focused on what has to be done, whether your primary way of doing things is looking at priority or severity, issues reported from higher ups, whatever your specific category, you can configure SLAs around that. We've got a real-time reporting element that keeps everyone up to speed and helps decision makers adjust rapidly to the current situation. Such information is critical to leveraging speed as an asset and performance multiplier. And finally, we've got the knowledge-based integration, which is going to allow for some self-service options and ad hoc training as users go to report issues. So I'll begin discussing these 5 unique features, focusing on the interface. That's really the wow factor. This is what I think separates JIRA Service Desk from the other products currently on the market. It's obviously the most visual, distinctive feature. So everybody, whether internal or customers, is going to notice this. And from there, we'll go through the short feature bullet list in the logical sequence. I'll do my best to stick to the same sequence when we go to the sample environment. Because we discussed the disparity between those customer and staff needs, let's look at how JIRA Service Desk begins addressing those points. So the intuitive interface, first for customers, the interface well exceeds the need for a fast and efficient means of communicating with the service desk. I think it pretty elegantly takes care of the want also for an unobtrusive interaction via the ability to replace JIRA jargon with everyday language, as well as prompts. You'll see the customer portal there on the right, and we know that customers don't want to be bogged down in terminology and technical specifics. And this interface allows JIRA Service Desk to overcome those adoption obstacles with a streamlined, user-friendly configuration. The customer portal is kept separate from the ticket or issue view, so those external reporters, customers, or users don't need to get into the minutia um, when working tickets is not part of their routine. So again, it gives them the means to report and monitor without unnecessary clutter. And on the left, you'll see the staff dashboard or interface. And so for the staff perspective, the interface provides a distinct portal look and feel through targeted tools, which are designed to drive service restoration. We know these best as the queues and SLA parameters. You can see also the additional configurations we've discussed, the reports, customer portal setup, and knowledge base. Excuse me, looking again at queues and SLAs, really the assigned work, priorities, and pending violations are going to be easy to identify for the staff in their portal so they can focus on the issues in the best possible manner. This really allows them a degree of flexibility when it comes to setup for those managers and team leads who are probably going to be assigned those administrative rights to customize the portal for the team and customers. Because not everybody needs or should have the same access. The add-on takes advantage of the JIRA's native permission controls, and I'll show you a little bit about that when we get to the sample environment. After the interface, the most visible aspects are the queues. The queues help you get organized in one place. I really think they do a good job replacing traditional JIRA dashboards that can easily become cluttered with gadgets and extra filters. So the JIRA Service Desk queues are the distinctive waiting lines that streamline your awareness of issues. For me, it's really the foundational building block of JIRA Service Desk. While the queues can be configured to meet many parameters, Precipio and Atlassian stress focusing on best practices. This includes the acronym Keep It Simple, Stupid. So with keeping it simple, you want to ensure that your queues align with your business process so they're working to the team's benefit. Some examples of queues I find useful would be awaiting triage, my issues, due date approaching, high priority, strategic impact, escalated issues, or past due. And really, you can name your queues and configure parameters however you need to. Because they're kind of the building block, queues traditionally provide you a basic means for prioritization. You've got some categories which help our teams make decisions as they're looking at what they need to do to manage their workload. They can see what's open, what requires immediate attention, and make some decisions on what could wait for the time being. And because each business process defines criteria regarding what work should be completed and what order, the JIRA Service Desk queues automatically sort and manage your work in ways that are meaningful for you. I think I've covered that already, but really, this is going to provide a lot of automatic filtering, so your staff's not going to have to go through every single ticket that's created. This would have been huge for me. Let me break real fast. In my experience, we actually had to email the service desk, and that was important because we had a people-centric service desk. We were bodies sitting in the chair. We weren't just relying on automatically created tickets from emails. What that forced us to do, though, is manually go in and edit and update every single ticket because as tickets were created via email, they can only have one or two fields, really the summary and description. So utilizing that kind of setup required a lot of time and effort on my team. On my team's part. This kind of setup you'll see with the queues and with the customer portal is going to provide a much more efficient and streamlined interface. So I want to tell you too that it's important as organizations grow and mature, it's natural to increase or adopt new queues for greater relevance and scalability. For instance, you may account for areas of specializations or new services. You may even want to open up JIRA to your non-technical teams. So queues are going to provide instant distinctions using those JQL search parameters, as well as specific fields or labels in order to filter things. So the configuration helps isolate specific issues for target audiences, right? And essentially, your personnel then can focus on what's requiring their expertise while sharing the portal with other support teams. So I like to say you can stay focused and proactive rather than wasting time sorting things manually or duplicating triage. I covered that a little bit in my experience that we had 3 to 5 people during the day, our day shifts. So quite a bit of time was spent doing that when we had automatically created tickets. So after you have issues queued up, right? The clock is really always ticking for service desk teams. So let's look at the powerful SLAs that are built into JIRA Service Desk. It's really an extension of the queues. The SLAs let you stay ahead of that clock. You can quickly see when specific work must be completed. The SLAs allow you to set certain points in time in order to gauge if work is progressing as it should and as it needs to, as you're defined by your business processes. It's based around statuses or transition points with the ability to pause on certain criteria as well. So really, with the SLAs in your queues, you can configure so you can see the clock ticking there on the left. And when you're in the ticket, you're going to see specific SLAs affecting that ticket and whether they're successful, pending, or breached. Um, the SLAs also let your team track multiple contractual obligations via specific configurations. So there's no more guesswork regarding your time commitments. You can really stay on top of that work and proactive rather than being a reactive stance. So the SLAs are actually available to work with your existing projects, which will help mature your current setup. Or by contrast, you can bring on new instances more effectively or more rapidly. A personal anecdote I want to share with you from my experience, there were two major parts to customer satisfaction, really keeping the promises and keeping them on time. So one of my mentors had told me doing what you said you're going to do when you said you do it is really an important step in getting headway with your customers. The SLA component helps you meet that obligation and lets you gain real results. And like the queues, they can grow along with your team and organization. And that's the idea. The JIRA Service Desk tool allows you to start as simply as you need to and grow as complex as you need to in order to stay effective. So let's look at the real-time reporting. Right, once we have the ability to manage our workload and meet our commitments, we need to gauge our performance. So good reporting at the start of ITS implementations can really make or break the later steps of the implementation. It provides a real advantage both to the project leads and the team itself. The reports can be configured a number of ways. You can utilize the powerful predefined metrics, or you can create your own with JIRA's JQL. You can combine multiple series in a single report, and they're easy to configure. In 30 minutes, you can have meaningful reports displaying results, including your SLA parameters. And you can do that in the basic or advanced options on the JIRA selection. So it doesn't require mad SQL skills or years of experience with JIRA to create some reports. You can actually spend more time understanding your data and planning your decisions rather than just trying to construct reports. Really, and this is important because you can get something meaningful without investing a large amount of time and energy. It's my belief that accurate and timely reporting is itself a critical success factor for the ITSM implementations, and certainly that service desk. I mentioned in the beginning, if you can get reporting right, you're gonna show people from the start how viable and how effective you can be. So knowing what's happening and clearing those bottlenecks early lets you leverage operational speed as an advantage multiplier. And finally, let's examine the knowledge integration. I mentioned this earlier, but I do want to reiterate. I think it could be overlooked based on the other four features we've covered. But the JIRA Service Desk can be linked directly to Confluence to provide you instant assistance in the customer portal. So when linked, customers are going to see a search box on the top of their portal, and as well as see automatic pop-ups for relevant articles when they're creating their issues. I believe there's a two-dimensional benefit to this aspect. It allows both a degree of self-service and it provides familiarization with your organization's documentation. When you couple this with the fact that the latest version of Confluence comes with knowledge-based blueprints and has add-ons available like Confluence questions, your knowledge-based and service desk interaction really provides benefits to the whole company and starts to become a true enterprise solution. I'd like to give you another personal anecdote here, peppering through with my experience. My team was the sole user of Confluence for the first 3 years we had it. I think it would have been valuable to other teams, especially those managing employees and work across multiple offices. I mentioned we did have employees in Gliwice, Poland. So for those international remote employees, having ready access to the knowledge base would have been key rather than relying on those US-based resources to be online in order to answer questions. I think organizational adoption is much faster with this kind of linkage. Again, in my experience, the entire organization would have benefited from using Confluence in several months as opposed to several years. Now, that being said, when I was leaving, at least 6 different departments were finally putting their documentation into Confluence and leveraging the benefits of that application. So now let's take a look at a sample JIRA Service Desk setup. I built an instance around Abbott and Costello's Who's on First routine, so you may see some names or terminology that's familiar. Basically, right, Abbott and Costello have moved into the 21st century and recognized in the hyper-competitive Major League Baseball industry, it's not only sufficient to manage their team issues, they've got to proactively address some technology and information issues as well. So to that end, they've chosen to implement JIRA Service Desk to help tackle those issues. So bear with me while I transition out of Keynote into my demo instance. So you should now be seeing my Sirius Sports Management Service Desk. This is the JIRA interface to the Service Desk add-on. So this is what your staff and actual users of the application are going to see. And here you see those individual components, the queues, the SLAs, the reports, the customer portal, and the knowledge base. So what I want you to see is the clean, streamlined, and uncluttered aspects we've got here with this interface. I've seen some great dashboards that actually in JIRA itself that provide great reporting, but it looks like I'm monitoring a space launch at NASA. There's so much activity going on. So again, following the keep it simple, stupid means using just what's needed. So here we've got the staff view. Again, this is our distinctive look and feel, showing you, I'm calling it the dashboard. We can call it the interface or the portal for the staff. But you've got those individual components of the JIRA Service Desk. And with appropriate permissions, the right personnel are going to see the appropriate items they want you to. So those users who have administrative rights are going to be able to see the customer portal and define those external forms and have the ability to do the knowledge-based linking. If you're just a user without the administrative portions, you may only see queues, SLAs, or reports. Again, this uses JIRA's permission restrictions, so it's really as customizable as you want it to be. So let's look a little bit at the customer view. This is extremely distinctive. This is not something we've seen before, but it's going to give them the basic needs and wants. They've got the ability to enter their issues. They can see what's open. So here I've got any number of predefined forms I can select from. I can see my current issues as this user, and I actually see the status that those are in. I can go in and comment on an issue. And actually, when turned on, I can receive specific notifications from the staff about particular tickets. So I can do a lot of things through this one interface. And remember, we talked about the needs and wants, simplicity, consistency, and unobtrusive. I'd like to give you another anecdote. This feature alone, the interface, could have saved me 18 months of adoption issues trying to get to internal users to use the service desk. I think anybody in their right mind would take an advantage to save 18 months off of anything. So again, while we're looking at the customer portal, we've got that user access restricted by role-based permissions. Up here, because I'm signed in as a user, I can create a service desk ticket and see all service desks. If I'm logged in as strictly a customer user, so to speak, the only thing I could do would be access the portal and create a ticket. So even if I'm in JIRA, I don't have this kind of interface. I'm going to see or be directed to the customer portal. So again, that helps keep those business customers out of the weeds. The specific interface for the customer portal right here. So when you open the customer portal, JIRA will provide you a URL. You can actually put that in your internal documentation, your intranet, flyers, etc., to direct your users to the portal. and any user who has access to JIRA can access the portal. So let's talk a little bit about the queues now. Again, remember, I consider the queues the basic building block for triage and assignment. And this is really a streamlined, efficient way to manage your workload. You can break down the queues a number of ways using your JQL. You can actually, if you need to, you could see tickets in multiple queues, or you could avoid that duplication altogether. Um, this is really a huge advantage to create and modify in one place. You don't have 8 users, I'll use my example. I don't have 8 users looking at 8 different dashboards that they've configured for themselves, right? My whole team would come to one landing pad, and if I'm the one who can configure these are the only queues they can work from. Again, it eliminates that clutter. We don't have extra dashboards and gadgets. We're not having to worry about specific updates and duplicated filters. Again, having eight personnel, I did create one dashboard, but because they like to see specific things, typically most of my team made their own dashboards. But if they didn't have a certain filter selected, or they didn't have it specified correctly in the gadget, they weren't going to see that up-to-date feedback. So the queues let you separate by ownership, priority, severity, component, any way you can think to slice and dice your tickets. And the parameters are evaluated instantly by JIRA Service Desk the moment a ticket is created. So I've got a few here. I've got open technical items. I've got open management items. The way these are separated is by assignee. So my open management items are those assigned to Bud and Lou. And my open technical items are assigned to myself, the main admin, and the other technical team resources. I've got a queue here for who's open issues. So you may remember who plays first base. Anytime he reports an issue, it's going to show up here. I've got a queue for unassigned. So if I don't have a specific assignee, it's going to go in this queue. Each user then, when they log in, would see their My Tickets. Any tickets assigned to every user would follow up here, or flow here. I've got a due soon based on the due date, and then we've got recently resolved. So I'm going to transition into the SLAs now, and you can begin to see a little bit of what we were talking about. When you've defined particular SLAs, you can have those show up in your queue results. They also show in the tickets. So let's look a little bit about how those are constructed. JIRA Service Desk on installation and assignment to a project will give you a few by default, and then you can create your own. Time to first response, time to resolution. These are some of the things that a service desk wants to know, right? You want to start tracking how long does it take you to touch a ticket, how long does it take you to resolve a ticket. Maybe you want to know how long tickets typically stay on hold. Going back to my experience, I can't do 30 minutes, but I can do an hour. So I wanted to know how many were resolved in 60 minutes. And the SLAs are pretty easy to configure. You've got a start point and a stop point. In this case, I chose the time to resolution starts when an issue is created, and it stops when the resolution value is set. For me, I'm going to stop or pause counting when a ticket enters the blocked externally status. So you've got your start and stop criteria, and then you've got sub goals that you can define. In my instance, I'm using the priority field. So trivial issues can have 120 hours. Critical issues have 48 hours, and blockers need to be resolved within 24 hours. So let's flip back over to the queues and show you a little bit about what that looks like. So when you've defined specific SLAs, when you're successful at meeting those, you're going to see a green check mark and green text. When you've breached or blown an SLA, you'll see this red X. And if I look at some other issues here, these have also been exceeded. Let me find some if I can. I made these a couple days ago. Okay, here we go. Again, red means they're breached. These here, where it's just black and has the clock, these tells you the clock is ticking for time waiting on support and time to resolution. So for my instance, I haven't configured anything super complex, but it's enough to show you how the SLA component works. And I'll give you another little personal anecdote at this point. So in my former job, SLAs were not well understood or documented or circulated among the entire staff. So we were really measuring our daily work using broad general parameters. We had severities of 1 through 5 with a specific hour goal. But it wasn't a bad start, but there were a few problems with it. those SLAs were not automated, so we had to have a separate dashboard to filter issues in and refresh every 15 minutes for tickets that had essentially exceeded certain parameters already. Um, these weren't these weren't configurable beyond an initial JQL, and they weren't trackable in the ticket. We had no way to look at a ticket here and see any kind of current status. Um, Again, I can show you this one. We had a request come in, someone needs a bat, and it tells you we're still within our 96-hour resolution time, and we're still within our 48 hours waiting for support here. Clear that window. So the SLAs are really, I think, the biggest component if you're looking to mature your service desk or take it to the next level. Um, Again, owning those tickets, owning issues through to resolution, and making sure they meet commitments is really what sets service desk apart from help desks or other entry points. So we've covered the interface, the queues, SLAs. Let's talk a little bit about the reports. This is the reporting interface. Again, the service desk will throw a few out there when you initially assign it to a project, and then you can configure your own. I've actually configured a few down here. Um, the reports are really, I can't stress this enough. It's easy to configure using either the basic JIRA or advanced JIRA JQL. You can have up to 4 series per report, and those sub-series actually include successful or breached SLA criteria. Um, so let me show you this real fast. So I made a report called Service Desk Successful, and I'm looking at 4 parameters. And these are really the SLAs I have. I've got time to first response, time to resolution, time waiting for support, and then just here, sorry, this is just my overall number resolved. Let me flip back to the SLA so you can see that. Time to first response, time to resolution, and time waiting for support. So here are my 3 SLAs I've configured here, and in the reports, you can then watch tickets that have either successfully met those criteria or breached them. So I made all my reports in 20 minutes or less, just so I could show you something for this instance. You can hover over and actually see at a specific date how many tickets you had meeting each of these separate criteria. So first call resolution, I have 1 ticket that was successfully resolved in 60 minutes. Based on the SLAs that we saw in the queues, you can tell that Abbott and Costello have a little ways to go, but that's part of why they implemented JIRA Service Desk, so they could start tracking their progress and work toward improvement. About reports, I want to pepper again with a personal anecdote. In my last year at my former job, reporting had really become a cumbersome and time-consuming activity. About a dozen requests were coming in a month for specific reports with information out of JIRA. These actually required skilled SQL DBAs and database admins to develop the reports. They were extremely complex because of the sheer number and the items being requested. It required a lot of hours diligent requirements gathering to make sure there was no duplication for future reports and to allow for scalability, right? Because when somebody submitted a request, they didn't just want to make it for that instance. They wanted to make sure it would be viable in the future as well. So the DBAs actually had to create a specific portal in order to manage access, user configurations, and subscriptions to these reports. And I got to say, the work was impressive. I'm not discounting the work at all, but I do question whether the reports were ever utilized to their full extent. And my assumption is they all too often went overlooked. So it took lots of time, lots of effort, but I don't believe the value was ever realized relative to the cost that it actually took to create them. And by contrast, I think you can make meaningful reports for the service desk or for your teams very quickly and easily in the JIRA Service Desk tool. And let me talk a little bit about the knowledge base integration. So when you're running JIRA and Confluence, you've got those linked. Identifying a knowledge base is as simple as going to Confluence and selecting that space. So I have Serious Sports Management space here in Confluence. I've got some how-to articles and troubleshooting articles, and all I had to do in in the JIRA Service Desk interface was go select that space. And let me show you how that works now. When I go to the customer portal, I see this type of solution. So this pops up, and as you enter articles, or sorry, words that relate to articles in your knowledge base, your users will actually be prompted to link to those articles. So this would either allow them to make sure they're entering tickets correctly, again, offer a degree of self-service, possibly, and ideally they could answer their question without having to submit a ticket. But that just depends on the nature of the ticket. If I wanted to order a specific glove or hats or uniforms here, or maybe I need to order a bat. I think I've got bat. There we go. Bats, cleats, and plates. So again, this is I think something that could be outshined by the other features, but I don't want to discount it. Again, for my team, we actually used Confluence and had over 200 procedures and and articles in there. Our infrastructure group had quite a few, but again, the 8 other departments only in the last few months had started migrating theirs to Confluence. So it's really Confluence is an enterprise solution tool when it comes to a wiki knowledge base, a lot of other uses, and when linked to JIRA, provides you a really robust solution. And having a specific interface to that through JIRA Service Desk is again an advantage that doesn't need to be overlooked. So we've looked at the major components of the JIRA Service Desk. We've seen our queues, our SLAs, the reports, the portal for both the staff and the customers. I want to show you real quickly, specifically on SLAs, what that can do. So here, this ticket is currently running against 2 SLAs, but if I change the priority, which for me is what most of my SLAs are driven off of, you're going to see different SLAs pop up. So if I make this from a major ticket to a blocker issue, now I've only got 9 minutes to meet my time to resolution, and I've already blown my time to first response and my time waiting for support. So let's go ahead and resolve this so I can show you how it pops up and at least meets that one SLA. So here again, we have successful SLA and we have several blown SLAs because I increased the priority on that ticket. I believe I have another one that I can use as an example. So here, someone had asked where are our roster and schedule documents. So it's an information request. An information request here in my portal looks like something simple as ask a question. And again, the customer sees this as ask a question. I'll show you quickly what that looks like on the configuration side. So for me, the form for ask a question is actually an information request issue type. And then what I'm displaying here is the summary field. But my customer user doesn't have to know that, doesn't have to know if it's a summary or the description or what specific JIRA field it is. They just know they're answering a question, and it would be required if they tried to make this ticket without entering anything. The interface would not let them do that. So another form I want to show you real fast, purchase of software. So it's an issue type in JIRA of purchase. Again, the customer doesn't care what the JIRA terminology is. It doesn't care to know what the summary is or the priority field or the description field, right? They're answering specific questions. So I can type something like, what do you need? How urgent is it? And why do you need this? I can decide if these fields are required. I can enter some additional text to help them identify what it is we're asking for. And let's look real quickly at that request new software in the customer portal. So you can see here's our summary field where we're asking what do they need, how urgent is it, and why do they need this. So if I need Windows and it's critical, I don't have an OS, it's going to tell me this is ticket SSM 22. I can flip back over to my queues, find this here in the open technical items. as well as, let's see, it should be unassigned as well. Yep. So in this case, it shows up in 2 of my queues. I'm good on my SLAs right now based on the severity or the priority field. And if I go into the ticket, I can click through my workflow briefly. And when I've posted a comment back to the reporter, you can see at this point, I'm stopped on these SLAs and I've met those parameters. Once the ticket comes back as waiting for support in this workflow, my SLA waiting for support starts back while my time to first response is still successful. So when I resolve this issue, I just realized my boss probably hates the fact that I used Windows as an example since we're a Mac shop, but that's neither here nor there. At this point now, we have 4 SLAs that we've met successfully. So if I go back to my queues and I look at recently resolved, we're going to see SSM22 and the 2 SLAs I'm displaying here in the queue are successful. So and all I was going to show you with this ticket earlier was just how we could change the SLAs again by moving that priority, which is the field I'm tracking against. So we've looked at the features in action. Let me briefly summarize the benefits as I see them. So bear with me while I fire my Keynote back up. So the feature benefits, right? We've seen the features firsthand. We've seen a sample environment. And I want you to remember the points we covered concerning challenges surrounding service desks. The JIRA Service Desk add-on really removes these difficult intangibles so that teams can begin realizing the measurable benefits just about as quickly as you can configure them. The intuitive interface eliminates the expectation versus value barrier as both users and customers can speak their respective languages and let JIRA handle the coordination. The custom queues ensure the right people are working on the right issues, and the SLAs take that a step further to make sure that issues are worked via the process-oriented relevance by tracking time. We've also got real-time reporting, which means there's no need to wait for weekly or monthly tallies to determine the current performance status and trends. And these are really the feature benefits unique to JIRA Service Desk. So real quickly, if you guys would, I'd like to have you answer another poll for me. Got this question and one more in a few slides. But I'd like you to answer which type of challenges most impacted Service Desk or ITSM implementations in your organization. So take just a few seconds there and answer. Everybody, we've got over 50% responding at this point. So I will let you know when we're complete. Okay, hey, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Over 60% of you said that the intangible factors caused the most impact in your organization, and I'm not surprised. That's exactly how my experience played out. So if you want to summarize this, again, the intuitive interface gives you the effective interaction, the custom queues, efficient workload management, powerful SLAs let you maintain or exceed expectations and commitments, and that real-time reporting allows you to monitor trending and identify strengths and areas for improvement. So despite the 4 unique features, JIRA Service Desk comes packing a wallop in its arsenal, really. The muscle behind the hustle, which is JIRA itself. JIRA Service Desk takes advantage of 10 years of JIRA development as it works seamlessly with a cross-industry proven application. It leverages the powerful JIRA workflow engine, JQL script searching, and administrative features already familiar to many companies, and it's customizable. So you can make JIRA Service Desk your own. Whatever we spend time on at work or play, but especially right when it comes to our compensation and our livelihood, when we spend time on something, we want to know it counts. And your contributions matter, and you don't want to have to scrap your hard work when something new comes along. So JIRA Service Desk works with what you have, works with your current project configurations, and helps you improve your current processes or allow you to create new ones so you can get a competitive advantage. So now I've wrapped up the webinar. At this point, let me go over to the questions section if you have not already asked. feel free to use the question utility in the GoToMeeting control panel. And bear with me, I will kind of queue these up and go through a few of these. We've got a question from John. Can you tie tickets together? Yes, you certainly could. Let me see. Oops, excuse me. What I'd like to do, guys, is see if I can look at these questions while showing you the Service Desk interface itself. Okay, so you should be able to see my Service Desk instance again. And let me have this up while we go through our questions. So again, John had asked, can we tie tickets together? Certainly you can, John. Take advantage of the link feature available in JIRA. This issue, let's see, duplicates SSM, and I'm just going to see if I can select. Oh, here we go, a ticket. So right, you can definitely link tickets just as you would normally in JIRA. This is available on the staff portal. I've got a question from Brian. What if you want to see all tickets across all customers in one place? Okay, Brian, I believe you're probably talking about the queues. Certainly, you could have a queue for all unresolved issues. You could order those predeterminedly, however you want, whether it's field, maybe on customer value. You could have users select that value at ticket creation, or have the service desk staff add those values as part of some working through untriaged queues. So if we've got maybe a queue called untriaged instead of unassigned, you could either have your service desk edit the ticket and select those specific values, or ideally configure the form that you're looking to track, configure that with the specific value you want to capture, and have your user actually select that on creation. You can make that required, and then they'd have to select a value. Then if that's how you want to display all your tickets that are open, you can certainly do that. I've got another question here from Gabe. Do you have any thoughts on transitioning to the service desk since we're already using JIRA for a help desk? Gabe, that's a great question. Personally, I see this as a huge advantage for users in your situation. Installing JIRA Service Desk will allow you to increase your performance and the maturity of your help desk. Your staff will be able to see real-time SLA criteria per ticket or across the queue, which is going to help you better manage your workload, increase your customer satisfaction, increase your efficiency rates. So it still opens up a whole new perspective, even if you're already using JIRA for your help desk. I've got a question here from David. As a service desk manager, can I assign a ticket to a group or team instead of just an individual? Certainly, David, you could do that. We used to do that all the time. Basically, we create a dummy JIRA user that represents the team, and you can assign issues to that user. It's what we used to call a queue, but I don't want to say that and confuse anybody. But you would assign it to that dummy user representing the team, and that'll provide visibility to all your staff who could potentially grab and resolve that issue. So you could assign issues to this dummy user and then filter those by a queue. You could again select that component value, assign that component to the specific user, and then filter them down here based on the component value. There's really several ways you can do it, but yeah, you're onto something. That's definitely how we managed our workload before, when you don't want to try and assign to specific users. Question from Richard: can tickets submitted to the queue be auto-routed to specific people? Yes, sorry, Richard, I answered that briefly above. You can handle such assignments via the component option in the project. So if we go to project administration, bear with me while I choose through the screens here. When you come down to components, you can actually assign specific users as a component lead and decide if they are the default assignee or not. So I don't have anybody else specified here, but if I wanted the backstop, for instance, to be Yogi Berra, I could select Yogi Berra as the component lead and then make him the default assignee. And then tickets that come in with a component value of backstop would automatically be assigned to Yogi. I've got another question here from Robert. Can reports be displayed on the customer portal? Robert, the answer to that is I don't see that as currently available. Again, this is release 1.0. I would definitely believe we'll continue to see advanced functionality in future releases of JIRA Service Desk. I think that's valuable, and I would personally bet somebody else is wanting that as well. I've got another question here from Spencer. Can you add a file to a ticket? Sure, Spencer, the functionality is still available to the staff as they're looking at tickets. I don't see an option again to add this through the customer portal at this time, but I can discuss a workaround for that. So normally, right as you're in the ticket view here in JIRA, you would go to attach files, select your files, hit upload, and you're good to go. The other option you can do currently is to send in attachments to JIRA via an email. So if you've got JIRA listening for email, you could pose an email, put attachments on there. As long as you reference the ticket number in the subject line, JIRA will go ahead and add that email body content as a comment and upload any attachments you've sent to the ticket. Got another question from JR. How is licensing structured around users for the portal versus agents? That's a good question, JR. Right now, there's not a differentiated licensing setup. Any users logging into the portal are considered JIRA users for the sake of licensing. So your JIRA Service Desk license must match your user count for your JIRA license. Try and wrap up with a couple more questions here from Brian. How would the look and feel change if you had 100 customers all submitting tickets? This example looks like a one customer relationship. Well, really, Brian, the look and feel wouldn't change. Each customer or reporter would see the same interface on the portal. The only thing that would change is the amount of tickets your team would see in the queues and the amount of SLAs you'd be chewing through, and then tickets showing up in your reports. So really, there's not a limit on users using the portal or the Service Desk add-on. Finally, let's wrap up with one more question from Spencer. Does Atlassian use this Service Desk plugin internally for managing its issues? Yes, Spencer. They have mentioned on several of the expert calls that they are using this product internally. So thanks to everyone who submitted a question. My final poll, let me go and activate this. You should see it. I'm just going to ask you the best feature for my organization would be, and then go ahead and select if that would be the portal and the interface, the queues, the SLAs, the reports, or the knowledge base. So I'll give you a few seconds to wrap that up. Just about got everybody responded. Okay, great. So 54% of you said the portal and the interface is the best feature. I'm not surprised. I agree with you there. 23% of you said the queues are best. 15% said SLAs, and 8% said the knowledge base. What I find immediately interesting about that is no one responded about the reports. You know what? I'm not surprised. Again, based on my 4 years of managing the Service Desk, I would be willing to bet that the reporting feature is something we would all like to have, but probably have a hard time making the value connection. Having good reporting data can help us as managers on the front line or higher ups make decisions, but it's a little bit of a backwards implementation process. I think really the first aspect is deciding what kind of decisions we want to make based on output from the Service Desk, and then determine what data would be necessary to make intelligent decisions. A little bit it speaks about my last year there and the reporting nightmare that kind of ensued, but I think that's why reporting tended to be so underutilized. It doesn't need to be complex, but the ability to make sound decisions stems from a well-built process derived from your experience right? So if we think of the data, information, knowledge, wisdom, progression graph, right, wisdom is the result of understanding principles that are based on knowledge, while knowledge itself is gleaned from understanding the patterns found in information, and meaningful information can only come from understanding the relationships between accurate, relevant data. So that wraps up the webinar and the questions. I'd like to take an opportunity and remind everybody again about our next webinar. I think I can actually get you there. We go. Got a slide there. Our next webinar, again, December 4th at 11 a.m. It's going to be Get With It, hosted by Chris Pepe. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending. It's been my pleasure to go through this with you today. We'll post a link to the recording in the next few days. Please feel free to share that with your colleagues. If you have additional questions, you can reach us at contact@precipio.com. And we look forward to seeing you again at our next webinar, Get With It, 11 a.m. Central on December 4th. Thanks very much, everybody, and have a great day.